So our mission is to change the trajectory of students' lives. And we really believe in our sort of personalized, customized approach to tutoring and to education. It's so much more than helping a student get a slightly better grade in a subject. It's about how that impacts their overall lives, their confidence levels, the types of reviews and feedback we get from customers. You can see the impact that personal match between a student and a tutor has on that child's sort of academic journey, but in their life as well, that confidence building aspect of things. If they're just not understanding something in school, it might be because that's not the way that they understand it, or that's not quite the way that they learn, or it's not being tailored to something that they're really interested in. And so we really take that personal approach. Our franchisees will meet with that family, initially and really understand who the family is, who that student is, what are their likes, what are their interests, what are their struggles, and they'll use that information to match them with a tutor that isn't just based on the subject matter, but all of those other aspects about that student, to really help them reach that, what I like to call that kind of light bulb moment. So.
Welcome to the Art of Franchise Marketing. Each episode takes a deep dive into the franchise space and explores how the biggest and best brands handle national branding, franchise development, employee recruitment, and localized marketing on a daily basis. This podcast is brought to you by Netsertive, a localized digital marketing partner for franchise networks. Netsertive's Madeline Park talked shop with franchise executives to discuss what's working, what's not, and answers the question, what else can you be doing to excel at the art of franchise marketing?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Art of Franchise Marketing. I'm your host, Madeline Zook, and today we have Michelle, who is the marketing manager at Tutor Doctor. Michelle, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's awesome to be here.
I'm super excited to dive into this space. I have 3 children. I am not anywhere near child services in terms of the brands I own, so I'm excited to kind of hear more. But before we get into that, I want to know who you are. How'd you get into franchising? What's your background? And eventually, how'd you find your way to Tutor Doctor?
Yeah, of course. So, interestingly, my franchise journey has been Tutor Doctor, but I'd say before that, I've sort of been exposed to franchising and business ownership throughout my life. My dad owned a quick copy franchise in South Africa, so I was actually born there. We moved over to the UK, and he's worked in different franchise brands within the UK. And even for myself, I sort of, when I was 16, sort of started my own little cupcake business. I was obsessed with baking, still love it now. It's still in the back of my head. Maybe one day I'll venture into that, maybe franchise it one day. But yeah, so that's kind of been that sort of entrepreneurial element has been a part of my life, and with franchising, kind of really getting into the role at Tutor Doctor was actually while I was at university. I studied international business in the UK. Being an international business degree, I did a year abroad, studied in Australia for 6 months, but then worked as an intern actually with Tutor Doctor for 6 months out in Toronto. And the rest is kind of history. I continued working with them during my final year at university, so that was sort of my part-time job, if you will, which was amazing. Best experience ever. A lot better than some of the other part-time jobs you can get while you're at university. And then I made the kind of big move out to Toronto about a year after that. So, and it's my journey with them has been, I guess, 8 years now. Also, I've been very fortunate and lucky, I'd say, and just grateful with Tutor Doctor being under the Clear Summit Group sort of umbrella. We have other franchise brands underneath that, and it's so collaborative, just in terms of the people that I've learned from over the years, through WSI, and recently, a few years ago, we brought on CodeWiz, Qualicare, College Pro, just all of those different brands, and the experiences from the team members in those brands has just been incredible. So Yeah, that's kind of been my franchise journey, and sort of started heading up the marketing team maybe 3 years ago. So that's also been a journey, challenges and rewarding experiences along the way. But I always sort of say we're all sort of in growth mode all the time, which is amazing. I love that.
And I think that that's great because we're very similar in how we found franchising. I think I was like almost right out of college. I had an executive assistant job and kind of got poached from a friend of a friend to go to Maid Pro at the time. And I remember I got the LinkedIn message and I was like, Maid Pro? I was like, I don't want to be a maid. Like, what is this? But eventually figured out, oh no, it's not me being a cleaner. It's me working out the franchise and kind of growing up. I was obviously in my early 20s, growing up with the brand, growing up with franchising. Really, I think is a super beneficial way to get into corporate, get into the work field, and help a lot of people along the way. So you say, Tutor Doctor and moving to Toronto. So is Tutor Doctor only Canada or are they international?
We are international, which is one thing I absolutely love about the brand. So we've got franchisees in Canada, in the US, the UK, Australia, South Africa, and Latin America.
So what is that like on your end, heading up the marketing team? Because I have a hard enough time marketing to my local suburb of Philly area, let alone, multiple countries. So what does that look like for you, on a regular basis?
So definitely adds some complexity. There are cultural differences. There's even spelling differences, right? British spelling versus North America spelling. Even Canada has slightly different spellings.
Sure.
So we work very closely with the franchisees in those markets, and a big part of the brand overall is how we collaborate with our franchisees and really get input and insights from them about what they need in the market, from a marketing perspective, marketing collateral that they might need, content that they might need as well, because we've got what I like to call our content machine. And so it's really about getting a lot of input from them. But I think also it's our responsibility to have some level of understanding of how those markets function. And so I just make sure that, for myself, I do research, with those countries and understand the different school systems, the different seasonalities. So you've got to think about, the summer time, in between school in South Africa and Australia is a different time in the year compared to the UK and North America. And so it's just thinking about all of those and having an understanding of how that all kind of works in their education systems. We've also got an awesome education specialist on the team who has good insights into how those different things sort of work in those countries. But yeah, a lot of collaboration with franchisees and kind of keeping on top of those things.
So, and I imagine part of the collaboration obviously is communication. And I had a call with a franchisor who wanted to kind of expand her franchise into America. And girl, I had to take this call at 10 p.m. because that is their morning time and their daytime. So does the time difference really mess with your brand? Because I imagine if a franchisee needs Michelle, you were probably sleeping. So what is that like?
Yeah, so it's definitely interesting. I do use my calendar little trick for those who are working with franchisees in different countries. You can put different time zones on your calendar so you can kind of see where everything's laid out. But it's through just communicating with the franchisees and figuring it out. So even this morning, we're working on some stuff with our South Africa franchisees. So it was an 8:30 a.m. call for me, which was their afternoon. And so we make it work so that it works for both sides. We try our best also to find times that work across as many time zones as possible. So for example, we've got every week, and we've done this even before I joined Tutor Doctor, and it's always been Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern. We've got our global team call for all our franchisees to come on, and that's one of the best times that matches a multitude of different time zones. Doesn't cover everything, Australia is a little bit trickier with the sort of 11, 12-hour difference. So sometimes those will be 7 p.m. calls that we do. But yeah, we make it work, and we make sure that, again, collaborating with our franchisees and also finding out what they need and the type of support they need, and how we can accommodate for that.
And do you find that through this kind of team collaboration that you're able to provide the same level of coaching? And I mean that in a way of, do different countries and obviously different franchisees have different personalities, but do you find that there's like trends in different countries where Americans are needy and the UK is they like this more, or is it typically a franchisee is a franchisee regardless of country?
That's a great question. I think, look, everyone is a human being at the end of the day. So everyone's different. Everyone's got their quirks. I'm different. Everyone's just a little bit different. And so I think it really, we focus more in on those individual relationships with those franchisees. So I know, very similar to what we do as a brand in terms of our personalized approach to education and tutoring, we take a really personalized approach with our franchisees as well. And our coaching team and our business coaches really make sure that they're understanding who that franchisee is, what their goals are, who they are as an individual. We're also big proponents of, we use the caliper test to really understand. It's a great self-awareness tool. So our franchisees have taken the caliper, all of our team members have taken the caliper. So I'd say it's less around, there are some cultural differences for sure, and there are differences in the education systems for sure, but I think ultimately it just comes down to individual people and how we personalize our support and approach to our franchisees, and that's exactly what we do with our tutoring services as well.
Yeah, and that's such a great segment into Tutor Doctor. So tell me, for people who might not be familiar with it, what is your mission? I think the name probably speaks for itself, which is great, which is what every brand wants. But give me a little bit more in depth into your mission, how many locations you have, and what your growth goals are going into 2024.
Yeah, for sure. So our mission is, and it's funny because our team does a huddle every day. And we have a cheer at the end of the huddle, and often it's around this mission. So our mission is to change the trajectory of students' lives. And we really believe in our sort of personalized, customized approach to tutoring and to education. It's so much more than helping a student get a slightly better grade in a subject. It's about how that impacts their overall lives, their confidence levels, the types of reviews and feedback we get from customers. You can see the impact that personal match between a student and a tutor has on that child's sort of academic journey, but in their life as well, that confidence building aspect of things. If they're just not understanding something in school, it might be because that's not the way that they understand it, or that's not quite the way that they learn, or it's not being tailored to something that they're really interested in. And so we really take that personal approach. Our franchisees will meet with that family, initially, and really understand who the family is, who that student is, what are their likes, what are their interests, what are their struggles, and they'll use that information to match them with a tutor that isn't just based on the subject matter, but all of those other aspects about that student, to really help them reach that, what I like to call that kind of light bulb moment. So, and I think really what makes us unique as a brand, I'm sure all franchise brands would say this, but first of all would be our franchisees, our local owners that are just incredibly embedded and engaged within their communities. They're going to different community events, they're on PTAs, the Chamber of Commerce. They are seen as those kind of local experts within their communities. Many of them doing different give back initiatives and that type of thing. The second piece with that would be that personalized kind of white glove service that I spoke about. And that extends beyond just the tutoring. That's the level of service that our franchisee is giving that family. That peace of mind that if that tutor doesn't work out, we're going to match you with another one straight away. The communication levels, the session reports that families receive. So all of that encompasses, that kind of white glove premium service that we provide families. And the third thing is we sort of frame it as we're more than tutoring. So there are so many other things that go into just providing tutoring. So I talked about session reports and the communication, but even beyond that with things like our X Skills program, which focuses in on kids' executive functioning skills. Things that generally, I don't know about you, but I certainly wasn't taught in school, like time management, organization, prioritizing,
Michelle, I
goal
wasn't
setting.
even taught how to do math. I still get all of it wrong.
Yeah, so, and that's the thing, right? So, and you probably needed someone who could tailor it to how you would understand math. So it's kind of that more than tutoring element of things that kids can really take into their lives, post school. Especially we've seen since the impact of COVID on students and their learning and their mental health as well, all of those different things. So we really pride ourselves on that kind of more than tutoring side of things.
Yeah, and I think one of the best things here is, your mission is just pertaining back to what's going to benefit the child and, their learning structure, their personal learning, which is obviously you translate those skills over as a franchisor and, running your marketing team and the support. So my question now is, obviously the demand is there, there is no shortage of children or people around. So what are your growth goals moving forward for Tutor Doctor? And do you help to kind of plan that brand marketing expansion on the franchisor side, or are you just consumer?
So in my particular role, mainly on the consumer side, supporting on the franchise development side, a lot on the content side of things. So I talked a little bit earlier about that kind of content machine. I'm sort of a planner at heart, so lots of systems and processes around that. But yeah, in terms of growth goals, there's a lot of opportunity within the education space, and so much has shifted since the pandemic, and now we've got AI coming into play as well, and what does that look like within the education industry, the tutoring industry. And so on the AI side of things, what we really see is AI is another tool, whether it's ChatGPT or whatever that might be, for students to enhance their learnings. But ultimately, those students still need a human being to help them navigate all of those different tools and platforms and solutions that are available to support them in their academic journeys. And so we've often referenced in the last few months, so we know about like B2C, B2B, we're kind of talking about H to H, human to human. AI can take us so far, and there's a huge amount of opportunity with it, which I'm super excited about kind of delving into more within the marketing space, but you cannot replace human beings and that human element. So we're actually excited about, where this is all going to kind of play out to. I'd say the other opportunity as well, which we're really seeing come to fruition in the UK specifically, but we're also seeing it in markets like the US and Canada. Since COVID, the government funding that's being put in place for schools to access extra tuition support for those students that are still catching up from the impact of COVID. And I think since COVID, we've really seen governments understand that tutoring and that personalized approach to tutoring is really beneficial for students. So specifically in the UK, we've collaborated with some key franchisees out there to really develop the resources and tools, including the marketing and the kind of brand positioning around that for that school space, and then our franchisees becoming providers and supporting schools with tuition support or tutoring support. And we see those opportunities coming up in the US and Canada as well, as I said. Even South Africa, we're starting to see that come out as a potential opportunity. So right now, I think we're in that phase of spotting these different opportunities and coming together as a team and collaborating with our franchisees on what those pieces look like.
Yeah, and I think that's incredible. I mean, even just what you're talking about, I'm like, I'm overwhelmed. I can't do her job. I could never do her job. So, having your processes and procedures is clearly, a definitely a needed skill, one that I was also not taught in school. But my question, so you've got all this going on. You've got the content, you've got your Fran Dev team, you're running your marketing team, you're in a whole bunch of different countries. You're working with students, tutors, franchisees. What does your marketing stack look like so that you can keep up with it all? Because I can't imagine this is just you with a single spreadsheet going, here's what we do. So, what kind of tools and things do you implement so you're able to scale, able to support, and then continue innovating like you were just mentioning with AI and, the new tools there?
Yeah, for sure. So my first tool, it could be a spreadsheet, but I'm a big proponent of it all. For me, it all starts with having a plan in place. And that, before that, there's, there can be different kind of innovative things that are happening, different developments that franchisees bring to us. But in terms of running a tight ship, and I often say we've got a small but mighty team, and I'm immensely proud of the work that my team does. But it's hard to do that, as you say, with different countries, different things happening, different projects on the go, if it's not written down somewhere with plans in place and understanding what's happening. So I'm a big proponent of Monday.com. It is sort of our central, everything is in there from a marketing perspective. We actually started to move the whole company over to Monday.com this year, which I was very excited about. So, project plans are in there. Our content machine systems are in there. We collaborate with agencies and partners on there as well to just keep everything in one place. Otherwise, it becomes really difficult to track what's going on with different things. It's also a really great communication tool between team members, between departments, between franchisees. I spoke about the UK schools work that we've been doing. That was all through Monday.com, and our franchisees were on that Monday board and could collaborate with us as well. So it's just been a really fantastic tool to keep everything in one place and understand what's happening where the resources are going and that type of thing.
Sure. That's awesome. And yeah, I think I see the plugs for Monday.com, and all the time I'm like, I should probably get my personal businesses on there, and then I just keep pushing it down the road. But now you've given me the boost to prioritize it. If you can do it in multi-countries, I can do it under my one roof.
For sure. And it's so intuitive, very easy to use.
Good. I love that. And then my last question is, sorry, I got off track because now I'm just like thinking, I'm like, oh, why didn't I use that sooner? You have your like you said, your small but mighty marketing team, and the importance of, like you said, you're really working on individual strategies with your franchisees, which are local markets, their countries. How important is hyper-localizing for you guys? Because, for me in the service brands, that's the end all be all. Do you find that it's as important in your industry, and then also as important other places in the world?
Yes, so it is. We go back to that first sort of unique that I talked about in terms of our local owners. That does need to be reflected in their marketing. And so what we try and make sure is any collateral that we're putting together, or whether it's the franchisees' websites, they have the ability to localize and add their personal touch to it. So whether on the their local websites, that's their about them bio, about the owner with a headshot of them, that's front and center on there. Local reviews are being pulled in to those sites, especially their Google reviews, which our franchisees have been doing an amazing job on the last few years, bringing those in. making sure that different marketing collateral pieces, whether it's print pieces or the ability to create social graphics and that type of thing, they can localize those as well. So what I really try and look at is what are the things that we can do as a brand to, because franchisees wear so many hats. And I always say they don't get into becoming a franchise owner to become a marketer. You know, that's not why they decided to do this. And so what are some of the things that we can do that don't necessarily need that local element, so they can focus on the things that only they can do? So for example, you know, we schedule around 15 social posts out to them every single month by country. So it works out to be about 50 posts a month that we're pushing out. But we've got a really strong process behind that and system behind that to make sure that that goes out without fail. So that means that they can really focus on the local content that's going on their social profiles and how they're connecting in Facebook groups and that type of thing. So that local piece is extremely important, but we try and make sure that we give them the content and the resources and the tools that they need to make it easier to kind of localize what they need to localize.
I love that. And that's such a good answer, because I think people push back on hyper-localizing a lot because it is a lot of work. It's an immense amount of work, especially on the franchisor level. But no matter where you are, no matter what industry you're in, you know, that's what you need. Because if you're going, to your point, H to H, human to human, that's what they want, you know.
Exactly.
This is not a B2B, a B2C at the end of the day. It's an H to H, which I think is a great way to close out our episode. We're coming up on time, but I have 2 more questions. If you had one piece of advice to give to a franchisee, what would that be? And if you have a piece of advice to give to a franchisor, what would that be?
Oh, those are big questions.
Very big. We never prep people for it because I like it off.
No. Oh, it would have been good to have prepped for it. Let me think about it. So, from a franchisee perspective, I would say leverage every tool that you're given from a franchisor perspective, but don't be afraid to innovate as well, in terms of what makes sense for your market, and lean on your fellow franchisees. I'd love to see the support and collaboration that our franchisees provide each other across countries. It's amazing. So really utilize that network of franchisees that you've got as your support. Many of them have been through, either if you're starting out, they've been through what you've been through. But even if, you know, you've been in the business for a few years, you've got others who may have some fresh ideas as well coming in. So leverage the different tools and systems, innovate where makes sense for you and your market, but then also just really leverage your fellow franchisees.
I love that.
From a franchisor perspective, my biggest advice would be to remember, so this is what I always think to myself, you know, when we're in franchising, especially franchise marketing, it's so different to being a non-franchise brand. You're almost going B to B to C. And half our job often is communicating with franchisees to drive adoption, to, you know, if we're implementing a new campaign or a new system, half the job, like we can do all the work in the world to build that system, to build that campaign, whatever it might be. It means nothing if franchisees aren't adopting it. They are the ones that are driving the brand growth, right? So with any project plan that I ever put together, communicating with franchisees is in there, and I look at it as we're marketing to them. So it's almost like a marketing campaign in and of itself. And so just remembering that sometimes 50% of our job is that communication, and that ultimately builds trust, drives adoption, and drives growth.
How are you so succinct and you don't have your own podcast? I love this, making it so easy for me. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for coming on. I'm blown away by, what you're able to do with your team, with Tutor Doctor, and I look forward to watching you guys grow. And if you have a tutor in the Ambler area that wants to teach an adult how to do long division, I'm open for business.
We can always find you an online tutor too.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to watching your growth, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Maddie.
Thanks for listening to The Art of Franchise Marketing. This show is brought to you by Netsertive. We help franchise brands and multi-location businesses run localized digital marketing at scale. To learn more, visit netsertive.com.